Yeah. Hello, sir.
Hello.
So the question is, how do you see the role of effective watershed management in ensuring long-term water security for the Himalayan region?
Actually, when we talk about the mountains, the Himalayas, watershed is very critical because our rivers are charged by watersheds. And if we look at the third pole region, then we have the cryosphere, the frozen water. Then we have the rivers originating from there, and as it goes down, then water is added after the precipitation rainfall from these watersheds. And if it has to have a continuous flow, we call it environmental flow through the rivers, then these watersheds are critical. Both the cryospheric one, but also the one with forest, agriculture land. So when all these, if we look at from the high mountain areas to the plain areas, so watersheds are critical, and watersheds need to absorb water and hold water for lean period. So that is the critical part. So when we need water in the lean season, and then we have to see the water are coming in the rivers, recharged in the rivers. If it is winter, then melting is less. But if it is summer, then melting is also there. But if we look at watersheds across the third pole region, we have a very much different situation. Just to give you an example of three basins, Indus, Ganga, and Brahmaputra. So normally we have three sources of water if we look at irrigation for our crop production. One is snow melt. Or the glacier melt. So water or permafrost melt. So water coming from that. The other is the mountain watersheds, forests, agriculture land, all these or wetlands. They hold lot of water. So that is another water. Then the third one is the water is stored underground. So underground water is in mountains also, but also in Tarai plain, which is coming from the mountains. So you have three different types of water. If you look and compare with three different basins which come to South Asia from the third pole region, the around 80 to 90% of water coming for irrigation in Indus is from the cryosphere, that is glaciers, snowmelt, and permafrost. So if that is depleted, gone, the Indus river basin is going to have a huge problem in terms of water for agriculture. But when we look at the Ganga basin, which is our middle, the India part, here the contribution of glaciers and permafrost and the cryosphere is only 10%. And nearly your 60 to 65 per 60%, or I would say out of 90%, around 60% water is coming from the mountains, and then of course the remaining from the underground. But when we shift to Brahmaputra basin, around 20 to 25% is coming from meltwater, and still around 75 to 80% are either from the mountain watersheds or groundwater. So our whole strategy of watershed planning or watershed management then changes very much. So for us, I think it is very critical in Brahmaputra basin and Ganga basin to manage mountain forest, mountain agriculture land, mountain wetlands, where water recharge system for underground as well as basin water underground system and river flows are maintained by these. So this is analysis, and when we look at a particular watershed, see, I worked in Mamde watershed in 1990s, and we wrote a book also, Integrated Watershed Management, 1992. There we critically looked at not a very big watershed, only 3,400 hectare, 34 square kilometer watershed, but it was so important to see water. I'm just trying to give you an example. We had a beautiful Tendong forest on the top of the mountains. That's very classical. And then you have Middle Hills agriculture. And then down below again, a little bit of forest, sal forest. And then it was draining into Rangit River, which finally merged with Tista River. So, but interesting, in spite of such a good forest, the water in the lean period was not available in the Middle Hills. What was the reason? The reason was geological fault, which was immediately after the forest. So all the water which is coming, which is released by the forest, actually were lost there, and then it again came back down below. There was another Sikip thrust from geological thrust. So the middle hill didn't have water. So for the middle hill people, water harvesting was the only option. So how to harvest water during rainy season, then keep that and manage water. So all those things were there. In spite of 2,000 millimeter rainfall, they were suffering from water scarcity very much. And even in cropping, their cropping was rain-fed cropping, very little water required. So they went into pulse, cultivation of pulses. So the whole thing changes, in watershed. So there are micro watershed issues, but I think in macro way we have to really see, as I said, basin-wise also.
Thank you so much, sir. एक और question. In your view, what are the key challenges in balancing biodiversity conservation with need for sustainable development in the Himalayas, and how can they be addressed?
I think if I look at the biodiversity, see, let me give you the importance of the third pole region again, or Hindu Kush Himalayan region. See, we have 4 global biodiversity hotspots. 4, if you see in the Kush. One is Central Asia, a little bit in Afghanistan, that side. And then we have the Himalayan biodiversity hotspot, and we have the Indo-Burman hotspots, and then we have southwest mountains of China, that Yunnan part. So 4 global hotspots in the Indian Himalayan region, Himalaya hotspots, and Indo-Burman, which is northeast from and Arunachal Pradesh and like that. So if we look at, these are the 4 hotspots. Why we say hotspot? Hotspot is not just the richness of biodiversity, but it's also a threat. This was also mentioned this morning. So if the region has rich biodiversity, but if it is highly threatened, then it is a hotspot. So in why I look at the biodiversity region challenge, see what is the challenge? See, climate change also has impact on biodiversity. Why? I'll just give you an example. So climate change is happening, mountains are hotspot, means mountains are more hotter than other places in terms of rise of temperature, and as we go elevation wise higher, the rise of temperature is also faster or higher. So in that context, because of climate change also, we have seen biodiversity loss is happening. How is biodiversity lost? Let me tell you, because of climate change, the temperature changes, and there are many invasive native as well as the exotic species which become very aggressive, and then they start expanding. When they expand, then the biodiversity is lost. So climate change and biodiversity loss is also linked. That is one part. The other part is we are bringing lots of land use cover changes happening. Eastern Himalaya alone, you see infrastructure development, roads, all these. So your forest, your biodiversity, fragmentation of habitats, all these are happening. Even the wetlands are drying and they are expanding, and so because of this, the biodiversity, the challenges are development, which is not environmental sensitive. And if we look the assessment which we have done in 2019 for the Hindu Kush Himalayan region, we have seen that if we compare 15th century biodiversity, we have already lost 75% of them, 70%. So we are working with 30% now of what it was there in the 15th century. So now, in another, the way the current loss of biodiversity is happening and the climate is changing, it is expected from that 30%, another 20%, 25% of biodiversity will be lost by 2100. So these are the challenges very much. How to really see. And just protection of biodiversity through protected area management is not effective. So biodiversity conservation has to be very much sensitized in the government's program also, that we have to keep track of biodiversity places, hotspots, and conserve them. But also people have to be part of this, and people are conserving in Northeast. So how we empower people to further conserve rather than make it difficult for them. So in that context, I think our community conserved areas, monastic forest, we call it OECMs, all these are also very important, and we have to give really emphasis. So the solution, if I look, no, what are the solution? One is protected area is fine, but we have to have more effective management of biodiversity conservation in protected areas. So when we say conservation, it is also wise use. We cannot be just protective. We should allow people to use. So it's a wise use. Biodiversity conservation, if you look at CVD's overall approach, so it is conservation but also wise use. Very much. So wise use concept has been very much limited. Only conservation means protection. So that concept has to be more widely accepted. This is number three. What we have to really see when we talk of biodiversity conservation. See, why when we say wise use, so entrepreneurship development. Develop entrepreneurship business models where the communities get the incentive to conserve. So they use also, but they conserve also. So ecotourism is one good area. So people come, they don't exploit. They see the nature, they enjoy the nature, watch, but still local community gets the money, economic this thing, and they are responsible to conserve, and they keep on conserving the areas or protecting the areas. So this is how we have to see very much enterprise development with community engaged incentive for conservation approach has to develop. In many places we say payments for ecosystem services for biodiversity. I think in our region payments is very difficult. So payment has to come through business model like ecotourism, or we have to really see and incentivize from government's program, government's big programs to incentivize the community conserved areas, people who are conserving in terms of getting the incentives.
Thank you so much, sir.
Good. I am very happy. People are just telling me watershed. I am more biodiversity person than watershed.
Yeah, that is the reason.
In Balipara, they are just thinking me as watershed. I started watershed, but most my work is biodiversity.
So, overall, like, how did you like the overall envision, earlier shifting from the Eastern Himalayan regions now towards the working for the third pool, the community centric initiatives, which
I'm very much happy about that.